Hello, I want to tell real facts about when and where the aliens were landed. Just after sunset on September 12, 1952, several children playing outside their homes in Flatwoods, Virginia, saw a bright flaming object move across the sky and suddenly land on a nearby hill a half-mile away. When the weird glowing object stayed there, 6 of the children decided to get closer. They started the 15-minute hike to the landing spot. Along the way, 2 of the boys, Edison and Freddie May, stopped at their house and told their mother that they were going with their friends to see a landed flying saucer. Their mother, Kathleen May, was skeptical, but also curious. She said, "You're not going by yourself!" It was just getting dark, so she grabbed a flashlight and joined the boys. By now it was already dark. The group of 6 children and 1 adult crept towards the glowing object. As they approached, they could see that the object was sphere-shaped, and was pulsating with light. The whole area of the craft was foggy. Whatever it wasn't normal. Suddenly, one of the children thought he saw something glowing in one of the trees just ahead of them. Kathleen May shined her flashlight up and everybody screamed. Floating in front of them was a 12-foot tall robotic-looking creature with glowing red eyes, a teardrop-shaped head, and a cylindrical body with antennae coming out of the sides. Says Freddie May, "It was big, it was scary. The strange creature also gave off a horrible stench. As soon as May shined the flashlight on the creature, beams of light came out of its eyeballs and it lit up like a Christmas tree. Then it floated quickly toward the frightened witnesses. Everybody turned and ran down the hill screaming. Nobody looked back as they fled back into their homes. Kathleen May quickly called the police, and investigators instantly converged on the scene. They found strange markings on the ground and a strange odor still hung in the air. The media picked up the story and the case soon became widely known. To this day, nobody has been able to explain the incident of the Flatwoods monster. A simple sighting of a UFO is called a close encounter of the first kind. A close encounter of the second kind is when a UFO physically affects the environment, such as causing a car's engine to stall. However, what happens when UFOs land and aliens exit the craft? These cases are termed close encounters of the third kind. There have been literally thousands of reported UFO landings across the world. More than 2,000 of these cases involve physical trace evidence of the landing. The Flatwoods monster case is only one example. Many other equally shocking cases exist. What makes landing cases so interesting is that they make the usual Air Force explanations of misperception or hallucination much harder to accept. These UFOs are no longer even UFOs, they are unidentified landed objects. For the first time, people were getting a good look at who was piloting these UFOs. The Brush Creek UFO landing. In February of 1953, miners John Van Black and John Allen were working outside their titanium mine near Brush Creek, California, when they saw a metallic saucer hovering over the area of the mine. During the next 4 weeks, the saucer returned 4 times. It was obvious to the men that the object was interested in their titanium mine. On May 20th, Black saw the familiar-looking saucer hovering about 200 feet above the creek next to the mine. After the object left, Black found several strange, 5-inch footprints around the area. 1 month later, on June 20th, Black approached the area when he saw what he thought was a small child with a bucket. Looking closer, He saw it was a small man wearing green pants, unusual shoes, a jacket, and a green cap. He was very pale and had black hair. Says Black, he looked like someone who had never been out in the sun much. Black watched as the man scooped up water with a strange cone-shaped bucket. The figure then heard Black approaching and ran back into the saucer, which promptly took off and disappeared. Black reported the event to the police. The story was leaked to the press and crowds of people showed up at the mine, hoping that the UFO would return again. Unfortunately, it never did, and the Brush Creek UFO landing remains a mystery. It seems clear, however, that the UFO was interested in the titanium mine. The Quay Trouble, France UFO landing. Some UFO cases impress investigators because they involve convincing physical evidence. On the evening of September 10, 1954, factory worker Marius de Wilde of France was about to make UFO history. He went outside to investigate why his dog was barking. To his surprise, he could see a large, strangely shaped object had landed on the railroad tracks behind his home. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching. He grabbed his flashlight and shined it toward the sound. To his shock, he saw two creatures such as I had never seen before. The figures were each 3 feet tall, with large helmets and one-piece outfits like the divers wear. Realizing that the figures weren't human, de Wilde turned to chase them. At that point, a beam of light shot out of the object on the railroad and hit de Wilde. As he says, I closed my eyes and tried to yell, but I couldn't. It was just as if I had been paralyzed. I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't obey me. The strange figures ran back into the object. The beam of light went out and the craft took off straight up and disappeared. De Wilde went straight to the police and reported his encounter. At first the police didn't believe him. But then more reports of sightings and landings in the area came in. First the police and then the French Air Force decided to investigate. They returned to the area and were shocked to find that the wooden railroad ties where the UFO landed had deep impressions on the surface, as if they had supported a heavy weight. Research later showed that the object must have weighed about 30 tons. Also, the gravel in the area had been exposed to extremely high temperatures. Today, the case remains a classic landing trace case, and is still unexplained. The Hopkinsville Goblins. One of the most amazing close encounter cases of all times occurred on the evening of August 22, 1955. The Sutton family of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, was minding their own business when a spaceship landed in their backyard. Moments later, a short figure with large eyes, huge elephant-like ears, and a slit-like mouth appeared. It had long arms and legs and was dressed in silvery clothing. Frank Sutton quickly grabbed a shotgun and fired at the creature. The bullet appeared to hit the creature, but it just fell down and got back up and ran away. They crept outside to investigate when suddenly the creature appeared on the roof of the house and grabbed at one of the family members. They shot at the creature again, but it just floated slowly down and scampered away. Meanwhile, more of the strange creatures appeared and began to creep around the house, appearing and disappearing. Finally, the Suttons had enough. They piled into their car and raced to the police station. The police were amazed to see an entire family who were obviously shaken up and scared by something. They returned to investigate. As they approached, they saw a strange lighted object dart away. However, the creatures were gone. This case is interesting because it shows just how varied the many different ETS are. While many reports of extraterrestrials can be categorized into various types, many other cases seem to involve totally unique ETS. The Hopkinsville Goblins are a perfect example. Coral and Jim Lorenzen of the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, APRO, later researched the case. They found the witnesses credible and concluded that the family had seen something not from this world. The Socro incident. On April 24, 1964, a New Mexico police officer named Lonnie Zamora was chasing a speeding car down the highway when he saw a white flame in the distance and heard a strange explosion. He decided that he better investigate, so he stopped chasing the speeder and began to drive towards the source of the disturbance. As he approached the area, he was shocked to see something literally out of this world. A giant, white egg-shaped object with a strange symbol on the side had just landed in a field. Standing next to the craft were two short humanoid figures about the size of a young boy or a small adult dressed in weird white jumpsuits. The two figures quickly climbed into the craft, which took off with a roaring flame. Officer Zamora hid behind his squad car as the craft roared overhead and disappeared into the sky. Zamora quickly alerted the other officers and an official investigation followed. The United States Air Force and the FBI both investigated the case. At the landing site, they discovered several deep impressions in the ground. There was also a dark burned section where the craft had taken off. Finally, strange metal samples were recovered from the site. NASA scientist Dr. Henry Frankel conducted an analysis of the metal and found that it was composed of an unusual alloy of zinc and iron. Incredibly, this alloy could not have been made on Earth, and the scientist concluded, this finding definitely strengthens the case that might be made for an extraterrestrial origin of the Socro object. Because of the physical evidence, Zamora's case generated huge interest. Further research revealed several other witnesses who also saw the UFO as it darted away. Hector Quintanilla, who headed the Air Force investigation, wrote, "There is no doubt that Lonnie Zamora saw an object which left quite an impression on him. He is puzzled by what he saw, and frankly, so are we. This is the best documented case on record." Investigators later discovered that the symbol on the side of the craft was the Arabic symbol for Venus. Could this have been the origin of the UFO craft? While astronomers have discovered that Venus is too hot to sustain life, perhaps the ETS have used their technology to build a base there. And in fact, ETS have claimed to have bases in various places on Earth and other planets. The Falcon Lake UFO landing. One of Canada's most famous UFO landings occurred on May 20, 1967, with prospector Stephen Michalak bearing witness. On that day, he was in the wilderness near Falcon Lake, Manitoba in Canada when he saw two red glowing, cigar-shaped objects in the sky. Suddenly, one of them swooped down and landed 160 feet away. Michalak could see it was about 35 feet in diameter. A door opened, and he could see strange colored lights flashing inside. He crept closer until he heard weird voices coming from inside. Thinking maybe it was an experimental Russian craft, he asked in Russian, "Do you speak Russian?" When he got no response, he tried 5 different languages. Still there was no response. Michalak then decided to get closer. He walked right up to the craft and looked through the opening. He saw a bright maze of lights. On a panel, all flashing in different sequences. Suddenly, the opening quickly closed and the craft took off straight up. Michalek felt a blast of hot air and his shirt was set on fire. Almost immediately he started to feel very sick. He was rushed to the hospital where he began to suffer a number of alarming symptoms including a headache, diarrhea, weakness, dizziness, vomiting, hives, numbness, swelling of joints, eye irritation, and burns. He was unable to keep any food down and lost 22 pounds. His blood lymphocyte level decreased from a normal 25% to a dangerous 16%. More than 27. Doctors examined Michalek, and the only explanation that seemed to fit was exposure to radiation. The Delphos, Kansas UFO landing. A significant portion of UFO encounters involve children and teenagers. Perhaps because they spend a lot of time outdoors. On November 2, 1971, 16-year-old Ronald Johnson was doing chores in his backyard near Delphos, Kansas. Suddenly, he heard a loud rumbling sound. Turning around, he saw a giant muffin-shaped object covered with blue, red, and orange lights, resting on a beam of light about 2 feet off the ground and only 75 feet away. The object was about 8 feet wide and glowed so bright, it hurt Ronald's eyes to look at it. Ronald called for his parents. At that moment, the object quickly darted away, knocking over a tree and taking off up into the sky. Ronald's parents came out in time to see the strange object dart southwards across the sky. At the same time, 2 of the neighbors had also observed the object land and take off. At this point, everyone noticed that the area where the UFO had hovered was glowing with a ring of eerie light. Mrs. Johnson touched the glow and her hands suddenly became numb. They called the police and asked them to investigate. Even the police were impressed by the strange landing trace evidence. Leading scientists were given samples of the soil for chemical analysis. The soil turned out to have many unusual properties, including high levels of calcium, sodium, and other elements that shouldn't have been present. Also, the soil appeared to have been crystallized, and it would no longer become wet or hold water. Finally, the area of the ring refused to support life. For years, no plants would grow where the UFO had hovered. Today, the case is considered a classic landing trace case. The UFO landing in Voronezh, Russia. Starting in late September 1989, the city of Voronezh, Russia, experienced a wave of sightings involving many UFOs of different shapes and sizes. Then, on the afternoon of September 27, 1989, several children were playing soccer in a local park when a giant red sphere, 30 feet in diameter, landed right next to them. A huge crowd quickly gathered. Suddenly, a hatch opened in the craft and 2 creatures stepped out. One was a short robotic-looking figure. The other was an estimated 10 feet tall. The alien appeared to have 3 eyes, was wearing a silver jumpsuit, bronze-colored boots, and a round disc on his chest. The crowd began to panic when the 10-foot-tall alien pointed a long tube at one of the witnesses, who reportedly disappeared and reappeared seconds later. Immediately afterward, the alien stepped back into the sphere, which took off straight up. Because there were so many witnesses, and because of the earlier wave of sightings, the event caused a huge sensation. The news agency TASS picked up the story, and before long, it was front-page news across the world. The landing was investigated by a wide variety of scientists including medical investigators, psychologists, criminologists, and more. It was discovered that numerous other people in the area had seen and even photographed the UFOs. Some of the witnesses suffered weird side effects such as insomnia. Others reported electromagnetic effects on their TVs and appliances. Most exciting, however, was the analysis of the landing site. Depressions in the ground showed that the object weighed several tons. Radiation was found in the soil, as were unusually high levels of certain elements, in particular, phosphorus. The Voronezh landing remains one of the most famous UFO landings in Russian history, and as of yet, it is still unexplained. UFO landings are distributed throughout the entire world and involve a huge variety of beings, including robots, humanoids, gray type ETS, and many more. The fact that ETS are so varied has puzzled researchers, as does the fact that ETS look even remotely like human beings. Could it be that humans and ETS are related somehow? As it turns out, some UFO abductees, people taken on board UFOs, have been told by the aliens that humans are, in fact, genetically related to ETS. In the next chapter, we shall examine the closest of all types of encounters, cases in which people claim to have been taken on board a UFO. Thank you for listening.